All right, we're waiting for Twitch, but hello, middle-aged gamers. This is Korean, and I am finally back. Don't worry, you finally get to see me, and hopefully you'll get to see Ben live at another point. He's got OBS issues, and hopefully we'll figure this out for him. Today we're talking about all things MMO, but I am not an MMO player, and maybe some of us aren't really a lot, but I imagine Adam is the biggest MMO player out of all of us here. But let's maybe it'll give you something new to think about or games, or maybe you've never thought about MMOs because we know a lot of you guys like to play PUBG, like to play Free Fire, a lot of these action-oriented games. So, before we get into it, so Adam, why don't you tell us what is an MMO for those people who have never heard of this category of games?
Well, traditionally, an MMO comes from MMORPG. So, RPG obviously is a role playing game, and MMO was mass multiplayer online. Now we have things like MOBA, so multiplayer online battle arena. But MMOs in general are just mass multiplayer online games. So, basically, a game where you have several people, basically, an entire server's worth of people can technically interact in one space. So, that's why there's some kind of argument as to whether a game like Destiny is an MMO or not, because yeah, technically you can log in with everybody, but you're only ever going to be in a space with about 16 other people at a given time. But yeah, basically it's a chat room where you can play games in in a way. So Antoine, what are you going to be talking about today?
What are we gonna be talking about today?
Mm,
First, you will kick it off with Black Desert Online. I'll be talking about Final Fantasy XIV and the World of Warcraft. So clearly, I have got the easy bit. Woohoo! Crayon is going to talk about Book of Travels, which is a game that I have never heard about. So he's going to tell you about it. And Phil is going to be talking about the famous Warhammer franchise with Warhammer Odyssey. Phil, how are we going to be examining these games and through what lens?
is he messing with us?
Yeah,
Yeah,
different perspectives
yeah.
and how the genre works. You can hear me? Yeah, that
Hmm.
works fine.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, keep going.
Yeah, so I'm looking at Warhammer Odyssey from an evolution perspective because we're looking at mobile phones as the genre to grow in. Koreans looking at Book It Travels from an innovation perspective. Adam, Black Desert Online from the Asian and Western perspectives of mass multiplayer online. Antoine, you're comparing Final Fantasy 14 and World of War. Oh, sweet joy. Adam, do you want to lead us off?
All right, sure. So I'll be talking about kind of the differences between Asian MMOs and Western MMOs traditionally. They've kind of blended more now, but they did kind of start off in different directions. So the game that I'm going to use as an example is Black Desert Online, which is technically three different games. It's Black Desert Online on PC, it's Black Desert on Xbox and PlayStation 4, and it's soon going to be, or I guess it already is, Black Desert Mobile on mobile. So there's actually three different games, but they're all part of the same world. It was developed by Pearl Abyss, and it was originally published by Kakao Games up until February this year, at which point publishing was transferred over to Pearl Abyss, so now they publish themselves. And the original PC game came out in 2015 in Korea, and then 2016 in the EU in North America. Came out, and then 2019 was the release of the Xbox, PS4, and the mobile version. So this is kind of a action-oriented MOBA, or sorry, mobile, or sorry, MMO. Geez, I'm getting all my terms mixed up here. Uh, so traditionally, if you look at MMOs, we're looking at kind of this turn-based kind of thing where you have ticks and you use an attack, and then it counts down and you have cooldowns and all that. But Black Desert is more of an action RPG, so you have more like moves that you can do in combos, and depending on the character's movement and which direction you're going and which attacks you're using, it's kind of more like a fighting game or more like a Devil May Cry kind of thing that you're doing there. Now, the reason that I use Black Desert Online as an example is because traditionally MMOs in the West were pretty much a game where you had tacked on a kind of a chat room aspect to it in a way. So it's kind of like, back they started around the time that we were, people were still using what was it, AOL and what was it called? Instant Messenger, IMs and all that. And basically, this was a way that you could play your traditional kind of game, World of Warcraft or EverQuest or whatever. But at the same time, you could play it with lots of other people. But it was still primarily the game was the main focus. It was just a way to have fun with multiplayer. In the East, it was actually more of a social thing where it was more of the chat room aspects, but then there was kind of a game tacked on so you could have fun with it. And if you look at a lot of the older games that were popular in the West, we're looking at, things like Ultima Online, we're looking at World of Warcraft, EverQuest, those sort of things. Whereas if you're looking at things that were more popular in Asia, you're looking at things more like Maple Story or almost 2D side scroller MMOs, which were completely different. So mechanically, Western MMOs were more developed. There was a lot more you could do with it, whereas Eastern MMOs were much more simple, but there was a lot more emphasis on making your character look unique. For instance, in World of Warcraft, everybody wanted high-end gear, but of course all the high-end characters kind of ended up looking very, very similar, but it was kind of that status of, oh, you have this gear. Whereas in Asian MMOs, there was a lot of emphasis on looking very unique and making your character stand out and being an individual avatar of you. And Black Desert Online kind of blends a little bit of these in that it's a huge time sink, way more than probably most MMOs. On the level of EVE Online is a huge time sink. I mean, they have everything from farming, animal husbandry, fishing, you can crafting and all these other things. But the thing is the game is basically you pay once, there's no subscription fee, but it still has a lot of these kind of traditional, because for instance, we've talked about this before, where Asian games were traditionally more played in a like a, what do you call it, internet cafe type setting. It wasn't something you played at home. And so because of that, these people couldn't afford games, so the games themselves were usually free, but then you could pay lots of little microtransactions. And Black Desert is definitely that. I mean, if you want auto looting, you got to pay for it. If you want, the better crafting gear sets, you got to pay for it. If you want a mount that not going to die, you got to pay for it. And so if you want to be able to play this game, you really need to, in any kind of non-exceptionally grindy way, you do need to pay for it. And because of that, it's actually kind of interesting in that in Western games, the end game was always kind of the goal, right? You want to reach the game, get max level, and then do the raids. Well, in Eastern RPGs, since it was more of a social thing, there wasn't so much of an end game. And Black Desert really kind of exemplifies this in the sense that when you reach the max level, you can still kind of get these, it's kind of a soft cap and you can go beyond that. And the same with gear. And then whenever the player base starts reaching the end of the gear, then Pearl Abyss will release new things that people need to gear for. So there's no end game content. You can basically run the entire game at any time, and it's more about just living in this world and that sort of thing. So it's very open. From a Western perspective, a lot of people are kind of like, oh, it's just a money sink, and it's not, it's just kind of a scam and that sort of thing. So if you're looking for more of that action-oriented play, but you don't want to pay as much, you might want to look into Terra. But again, there's, like I said, with, say, Maple Story and making your character very unique, Black Desert Online has some of the best character creation tools that I've seen in any game, single player or multiplayer. So yeah, don't want to take up too much time, so I'm trying to make this quick.
Oh, good. Phil, you got any thoughts about that or any questions for Adam?
He's thinking hard.
Man, there was one when he was talking, I've kind of
zoned out.
kind of forgot what I was about to ask.
No worries. We'll come back to you, Antoine. What about you? Any thoughts about
I think a little bit of delay actually.
There is a little bit of delay. I'm pretty sure.
Myself, I never played this game, and I was kind of excited of Adam's presentation until you arrive at the microtransaction part. I was like,
there's a lot of microtransactions.
That's a killjoy for me now.
Yeah, and it is a lot like EVE Online. Yeah, it is a lot like EVE Online as well, in the sense that if you're a new player, you're never going to catch up with the older players. There's always kind of this time, like even if you paid for everything, you're not paying for, you're not paying, like say in Final Fantasy 14, you can pay a flat fee and then level your character up to level 70 now. So you can just jump to level 70. In this, it's not that, because it's always about getting the gear and then using that gear to acquire better gear. So it's kind of like in Borderlands, where you're leveling up, and as you level up, you're getting better and better weapons. It's like that, but it never ends. There's no like end-game dungeons to raid. It's anything you do can get you better gear. And so there's just this constant, you have to keep playing. So a guy that's been playing for 4 years, there's just no catching up to him. And it also has
years,
yeah. And there's also a big emphasis on PvP. So once you hit level 50, you can't opt out of it. You're just stuck in it all the time. So it is that, but it is kind of balanced at in the same time, where you might have quote unquote better gear, but you could still technically lose to somebody that's that's only been playing for 2 years. So it is very skill based in the same way as well.
All right, Full. Sorry, you were gonna say.
No, I'm being careful not to tread into Final Fantasy 14 too much. Because
it's okay, you can go.
Final Fantasy 14, you get players that still sign up much later on, and they've still got battle that game about doing content that was from expansions before. So there's still that, if you're a completionist perspective, there's still so much content to get involved to. How does that compare? In this, once you've ground the levels, is there a lot of older content that you have to, go back through?
This is probably more like Skyrim or Fallout in that regard. So you have a main quest, but up until like maybe the first 15 minutes, they put you on the quest, and that's basically just to get you into the world, and then you could just ignore it and just go anywhere you wanted to. So it's more like Skyrim in that sense, where it's like, oh, okay, you want to go east, or do you want to go west or north or south? Just go wherever you want, do whatever you want. It's basically a big open world. And I think that's where I've seen people compare it, where they say something like Final Fantasy or Warcraft are what we call theme park MMOs, where you have rides that you want to do, you have a raid that you want to get to, or you have a dungeon you want to run. But in Black Desert Online, it's more of a sandbox MMO, where it's just, go out in the world and do whatever you want. Go over to this area and do some PvP, or go over there and go cut down some trees, or whatever you want. So yeah, there's not so much that sense of progression or story or anything like that. Once you're in, you can basically just do whatever you want.
Okay. Maybe final thoughts for everybody. I mean, we've all had our own experiences about Asian and Western in our own ways. Maybe we'll go Antoine, Phil, Adam. Antoine, what do you think MMOs have evolved into this sort of Western and Eastern way? Or what do you think things have happened like this?
I think the mentalities are very different. So it's like for me, for instance, it's very hard for me to think of playing a game with microtransaction setting. For me, in a mobile game, microtransaction could be justified if it's free at first. For MMO, I'll pass. It's just not my mindset.
Okay. Phil, what about you? I mean, what do you think games have evolved so differently in the West and the East?
To be honest, I think it's just culturally and more what players and people think from the perspectives, because I was kind of shocked when I first heard, that system of paying for glamour, and even Final Fantasy 14, when I go onto the store and you look and you see, some clothing that's $15 or something, $20, I'm like, holy, who's going to pay $20 just for a little bit of glam? So it did shock and surprise me. And even now to this day, I'm like, I wouldn't pay that. So I think there's still a difference in what different users are willing to pay for.
Phil, what do you think there is that difference? What do you think has caused it?
Well, like I say, I think it's more just to do with mentality of what people are expecting to pay for. I wouldn't, I might pay for, a really cool weapon. I've done it before in games. I wouldn't necessarily pay for that glam and to walk around and look different and unique. So obviously I think there must be something culturally there that people are more willing to wanting to walk around and look better rather than necessarily play better.
Okay. Adam, final thoughts? You want to commit to an answer of what is culturally different between the East and the West?
I think it was more of the origins of it. If we look at for example, again, Final Fantasy 14, when it first came out, it was just a mess. And then when they did Realm Reborn, Yoshi P came out and said to the people in the office, he said, "Has anybody played World of Warcraft?" And when the ones that hadn't, he's like, "Go play World of Warcraft. That's what we're going to do." So I think they had different origin stories, but I think we're seeing a blend because even now, like, was it World of Warcraft has, you can buy minions and you can buy special effects for mounts and stuff like that. So I think it's more of where they came from, but I think they're starting to blend more into each other because, like I said, mechanically, Asian MMOs were simpler, but look at Black Desert. It's extremely complex. Look at something like World of Warcraft, where you had a lot of emphasis on, getting high end gear, but now they have transmog. So I think it's more about the origins, and I think as the world becomes more globalized, MMOs are starting to bleed into each other, where it's not as distinct as it used to be. Um, but yeah, I think it kind of started with the technological advance, or the technological accessibility that we had. In the West, people had PCs at home, and so we could, invest in certain things like a nice PC and invest in the game and pay subscriptions. Whereas in the East, a lot of people didn't have them. So, the games had to be free, but they had to make money some way. And so, it was these microtransactions that, like, oh, just pay $5 here or pay $5 there when you want to. And then it kind of became an addictive thing that people paid into. Um, so, yeah, I don't know if there's that big of a distinction anymore. I think it's more where they came from.
Okay, very good. And with that, Adam's lovely transitioning, mentioning World of Warcraft, we're going to go on to Antoine and Final Fantasy 14. And wow.
Absolutely. So yes, I'm gonna call World of Warcraft a WoW from now on. If you don't mind, that's gonna be much easier for me. I don't think I need to really present it, but I will anyway. So, WoW is from 2004 already, so that's a very very good age for it. Released by Blizzard, of course. FF14 2010 by Square Enix. I'm only talking about the vanilla versions or Real Reborn for FF14. There are MMOs that I played exclusively on PC, even though that I know that Adam is addicted to the PlayStation version. Maybe Phil too, actually. Is it? Or is it Ben? I don't know. I don't remember.
Now, Phil plays on PS5 as well.
Oh, all right. Fair enough. Anyway, not the point. So I just chose these two games because, well, as you said, that since they are bleeding into each other, and Craig mentioned before, both of these games are very similar, on the fact that both worlds are pretty fantastic and quite linked. They are well loved by the community, and there's a massive community on both games. Not so much WoW anymore, but are trying to revive it with Classic. And you can even say that 14, FF14 starts when WoW finishes, kind of, in a 2010, 2012 zone. So it's kind of the community are kind of the same on both games. In terms of cost, both of them are about 13 Canadian dollar months on top of the base games, on top of each add-ons, which means that I spent far too much money on it already, and I'm the one who don't want to pay for microtransaction. I don't even want to count how much money I spent on MMOs. That's terrible. So yeah, as I said, I picked these two games because they are quite similar in terms of universe of gameplay, and they are very easy to compare. So as you know, I'm supposed to be the one to talk on this section, but I'm gonna be relying on your opinions because I want to. I heard everything on this. I'm going to talk about the class slash character system. So just to remind you, in a WoW, you have to choose your side, either your Horde or Alliance. You choose your race, Tauren, Troll, Dwarf, etc. And you know them better than me. And finally, you have to choose your class, your job, which, and that I found fantastic, some jobs are race specific. So a Tauren, the big bull, is not going to be a warlock, and an undead is not going to be a shaman, for instance. And with FF14, you are at the other end of the spectrum. uh, your faction absolutely doesn't matter, whether you're Maelstrom or Immortal Flame or whatever. It's only count for PvP, and even in PvP, you can switch sides whenever you want. So anyone can do anything. Um, we talked about in the Final Fantasy Fiesta with Adam last week, but in your party, you can have a Lalafell as a tank. If you don't know Lalafell, that's a midget of 1 meter about. So imagine this as your tank. And you can have a Rogadin, so big American catcher, as your dancer. Doesn't make sense to me, but and you can you can reset your race, you can reset your looks anytime as long as you pay for it in both game, with the exception in WoW that you cannot change your faction. So if you start playing Alliance, or if and you ask your friend to play later and they say no, I want to be Horde, well, too bad. You have to play to start a new character from scratch on the other side. You can't switch side. So I don't know. I'll give my opinion on this later. I just want to hear you. What system do you prefer? I have a very set opinion on this, so you're gonna not gonna change my mind anyway. Just don't want to change yours. Tell me which side do you prefer?
All right, Adam, why don't you go first?
Uh, it's funny because I have a friend and he is very much on the side of WoW, and I am very much on the side of Final Fantasy 14. And the reason for that is the reason he likes WoW is because, especially in classic WoW, the way you, and this is again going back to the Asian way versus the Western way, in WoW you had tech trees and you could customize basically like, oh, I want a little more crit, or I want to, make my backstabs a little stronger, or, deeper down in the trees you could even have specialized abilities or something like that. And so everybody, even though like my rogue and Antoine's rogue might play very differently, even though we're both rogues. Whereas in Final Fantasy 14, every warrior is identical. The only thing that's changed is if you put materia slots or put materia into your armor, where it's like, oh, okay, I have slightly more life, or but it's really only going to make a difference in the highest tier of things. But every warrior is going to play identically to every warrior. Every rogue is going to play identically to every rogue. And my friend loves the customization aspect of World of Warcraft. But as World of Warcraft went on, there started to be a meta, and everybody started to be like, this is the best way to build your rogue. And then everybody's building the rogue the same way. And if you don't build it that way, then you're gimping yourself, and people get mad at you for not building correctly.
Be careful, you're coming on toxic communities here.
Yeah, exactly.
We are not all 13 years old.
Yeah, no, but really, if you're doing a raid, and people are like, you're not getting the damage out, that's costing the rest of us, and so a lot of
Don't
people
listen
would,
to them.
well, but that's how
Change
people
your
are. But that's how people are. But then, yeah, and then over time, because it was kind of problematic, WoW has simplified it now so that at every so levels, every like what 3 levels or whatever, you can choose one of 3 things, and there's only minor differences. Whereas in Final Fantasy 14, and that's the thing is like, okay, your play as a rogue, but you can kind of play of one of 3 types of rogue, and then you can customize it a little bit. In Final Fantasy 14, you don't need to do that because you can play as 14 different classes. So if you're like, I want a tank today, I don't have to play the tank spec of a paladin. I just switch to a paladin, and if I don't have to switch to the DPS spec of the paladin, I just become a samurai or a monk or a ninja or a whatever you want to be. And so for me, that's why I like Final Fantasy 14, because WoW had that customization thing, but over time balance got really hard to do, whereas in something like Final Fantasy 14, balance is really easy to do. And so that's why for me, I prefer Final Fantasy 14. And then also just because it's easier to switch. I don't have to log out, log into a new character, re-level them up if I want to try a new class.
All right, fair enough.
Uh,
How about you, Phil? What do you think about it? Sorry, Crayon, stealing your job.
no. Go ahead.
Um, I think
Put you on the stop,
it's
on the
difficult.
pot,
I think I
on the
prefer
spot.
the WoW system if it was something that I was only playing for a short while. You play your class, you can start how you want, you can get involved. But I think for longevity's sake, if it's something that I'm going to long period of time for multiple years, then just being able to log into the same character, have the same friends network, be in the same free company, you're not having to have 5 or 6 alts with a tank and a fighter. And I think that gameplay definitely is more beneficial if you're looking for repeat subscribers that are going to really get involved with your game. And I do hear a lot from WoW players who are converting over to Final Fantasy. When they join the FC, and they're, oh my god, like I can play many characters. Wow, this is like phenomenal. Like eye-opening surprise and shock that they can play much easier gameplay.
For the record, Phil says FC. That stands for Free Company, which is the Final Fantasy 14 version of a guild. If you play FPSs, if you play shooters, you probably know them as clans. So there's yeah.
Thanks for that explanation. I thought FC was football club.
No, not in this case. It's a Free Company. Yeah.
Yeah, always stuck on guilds. That's much easier for me to say. Yeah, so well, thanks for opinions. Um, okay, I agree on the fact that WoW is rigid. Okay, that you have to get a new character for each new class, but even in FF you have to level up from scratch. So the fact that same character, different character, apart from the yes, you have to log out, log in, and if your server is already full, that could be a pain. But it's not like the servers are overcrowded anymore. So it's just a minor inconvenience for me. It's just that I found Final Fantasy 2 kind of generic, if you will, in that regard. Like, it doesn't matter which race you choose, it's just aesthetics. There's um, there's a it's nearly aesthetics because there's a tiny change of stats, if you will.
So small.
Again, exactly. Between races, it just doesn't matter. You can just choose any job you want. Again, Lalafell Wire doesn't make sense, but you can still do it and have absolutely no problem against other races. So the fact that you have specific, class for a specific race in a WoW, it really gets you attached and say to your character, and that's something for me that you don't have in FF because you can just change it anytime. If next week you want to change from Rogadin to cat people, which I don't remember which is their name, anyway you can, and that's it. So you don't really get attached as much as, I still had my troll from 10-15 years back in Warcraft, and I remember that troll exactly what it looks like. Also with this system in WoW, you had mules. I don't know if you recall mules, but basically it's characters that you can create and keep at level 1, and specifically to just carry your extra stuff. You put it in a capital city next to a mailbox, and when you have extra stuff with your main character, you just mail it to your mules, and that's it. In FF, you have to buy servants for this with a monthly subscription. Hello,
Really?
Eastern. Yes, you
You
have.
get
You
you get
can
2 for free.
two for free. You can go up to 9. Two is not enough. If you're playing endgame, two is not enough. Just 9. Remember, how many class do you have in FF?
I think it's
I
like
don't. I
13
can't
or
even.
15 now, or 14, somewhere around in there.
With 8 piece of set per classes or something like this. That goes fast. That goes very fast. So yeah, you have to buy servants. There's just no choice. So your subscription go up and up. And again, going back to the Eastern MMO that Adam was talking about. So why did Square decided to move this way? I think maybe it's a question of money. Maybe it's a question of mentality. Maybe I'm just too old and too attached, to an obsolete system. I don't know. So that's why I'm calling to the listeners of this podcast. Tell me, am I a boomer? I'm just too old. Just leave me your comments, especially if you're a younger player, if you're a lady, because we don't have lady in this panel. So yeah, tell me what your thoughts on it. So that's what I want to know. I want to know why they did this. I want my WoW system back, and yet I didn't play classic. I really, because I just don't have time. But I want to play WoW classic.
I'm kind of curious. When was the last time you played Final Fantasy 14?
9 months, a year ago. I've been
Oh,
very
okay.
busy since then. Yeah.
Because I mean, I
Uh,
have every class, but then I still have enough slots for the gear to gear out every single class
really?
and all the crafting, and I still have space left over.
Or maybe I'm just very bad at managing my stuff. But I know that I was like, it's
Especially
just too
because a
full.
lot of classes can share gear. So, like for instance, the samurai and the
That's true.
monks can
Yeah.
share gear. They don't need their own sets.
Yes, but there's also this kind of epic sets that you get at level 30, level 60. I like to keep my special, even if I know that now you can have, like illusions and just look like this look like another piece of equipment without really keeping it in your inventory. I just had every set of armors of every class
Oh,
at
so you're a
every.
hoarder.
Yeah, that's my issue.
You use the glamour dresser, right?
Not that much. No, I really like. Sometime.
You've tried using the glamour because
I know
those
I
gear sets you can
should.
put into the glamour
I know I
dresser.
should, but
It takes some
when
invention.
when I go to my inventory and I see all the piece of equipment like this, I'm like, ah, that's just cool. So now imagine the trash in my garage in real life.
No, I think it's interesting because Final Fantasy 14 originally, like I said, Yoshi P basically said, "Hey, have you guys played WoW? Let's do that." And then that's where they
Exactly the
started
point. Yeah.
off. But since then, WoW has started copying Final Fantasy 14 because things like Final Fantasy 14 said when you do a dungeon, if you've already done it or you're out of level, will level sync you. WoW did not have that, but now WoW does. And a
Yes,
lot of things like and then like Final Fantasy 14 had the glamour dresser. Now WoW has transmog. So a lot of these things originally Final Fantasy 14 was copying WoW, but now WoW has started copying a lot of things out of Final Fantasy 14.
at
So
the
it's kind of
same
interesting to
time.
see that stuff moving back and forth.
Yeah, but at the same time, as Kren said, the first iteration of FF14 was a catastrophe.
Oh
They
yeah,
had to copy. They had to copy. WoW to really start. And by the time they really
yeah,
started and get most of the community of WoW was dying. So they had to copy FF14 to try to steal back this community.
yeah.
and yeah, and I know some FF14 players who actually went back when Classic, popped up. So
Oh yeah, when
popped
they
up.
did WoW Classic, yeah.
Alright, we're gonna have to
Yeah, exactly.
table this gentleman and move on to full game.
Sorry.
No worries. All right, so let me get Phil's trailer.
Distracted with Final Fantasy.
We already had one podcast for that. All right, Phil, why don't
Can do
you
another one.
introduce Warhammer Odyssey?
Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, I really always loved the theme, the Warhammer world. Ever since what I was like about 13, 14, collecting the miniature games. So it seemed a natural choice when it came to looking at the how much Warhammer as a company, as a game, has progressed through different editions. When you especially think about, I don't know, people who have played things like the Blood Bowl games, early Necromunda games, which, as we were talking about very early on in the podcast, were those tick-based turn, move your units around the board. That was, how they felt, and then they've progressed through to the RTS style of Dawn of War and Total War. So you kind of see this expansion, even the new Battlefleet Gothics, as they expand this market. So yeah, I posted with Warhammer Odyssey. Came out February the 22nd this year, so it's a pretty recent addition on Android and iOS, fancy MMORPG, and it was developer Virtual Games giving it a shot, who've reasonable experience with Celtic Heroes, looking at a variety of classes and bringing it into a world of how mobile phone MMORPG can expand. And this is especially interesting for me because I'm really looking forward to Diablo 4, which is also going to be on the mobile phone. So it was kind of an idea of maybe what I'm going to be basing my judgments for Diablo 4 on next year. Or later this year, whenever the exact release date is going to be. I mean, Odyssey got 3.4 out of the App Store, 3.5 on the Android Store. Reasonably solid scores, but generally reviews coming at, it's good, it's interesting, there's stuff there to do, but there's nothing particularly special about it, which sends alarm bells ringing. Hopefully, that's something that Diablo managed to improve on. The cost is free, which surprised me because I was expecting a lot more microtransactions in. There are microtransactions to reset stats and skills, much like a lot of the other games. Gain more baggage space, gain more bank space, reset tokens for your trees, which is nothing particularly too special for me. And actually, spending doesn't massively have a huge effect. You can buy XP bonus things, but there's an in-game market where you can trade for those. So if you're farming reasonable items. You can sell your items, and you can use the gold that you get to buy the what's the word? The microtransaction items that people can then sell, which is an interesting mechanic. You can rich in the world by spending your money and then selling those items, which I've seen before in other games as well. It's interesting. Um, so for me, I enjoyed the fact of the variety in it, and seeing that even in a mobile phone game now, you're getting to a place where there's 6 different variant classes, multiple option builds for each one. So you could have like the Elven Archmage. I play as a DPS option, a damage option, but you can also deal. You can also have the healer option. And the world inside the system benefits the fact that if you have a varied group, if you're XP farming, you have one of each class, then you get double XP, which is an interesting way of making, even on the mobile phone, improve the social aspects of, okay, I'm on the board with hundreds of weird people. Let's at least do some gaming together because we want to get the double XP. Which is weird because I was a really low level and I entered this area. I think I was like level 17, and I entered an area. They were farming stuff at like level 28, and I got an invite to a party, a random group, to go and farm the ridiculously high level spiders. I had to, my way over to the area, and it was just the idea of getting the double XP for them benefited even having a level 17 DPS guy not doing anything, which was unique and interesting, and immediately made me feel wanted. I was like, oh wow, okay, I'm nothing, but this guy's still trying to grab me in. I didn't realize he got the W at that stage, but I mean that's definitely a positive social aspect that I've not seen in too many other places. So the only problem with the it's not particularly open world. I mean, I don't know whether I was expecting it to be more open world with the limitations of what I still in my head perceived to be a mobile phone game. So it's very much linear with the progression of the dungeons. The world is open to a degree that you can go over and do some farming on, some level 26 spiders or some 27 zombies, but it still gets quite repetitive and a little bit boring. But release at the moment, so they've said that there's room for improvement. They're open and aware to the community feedback. They've already released a few different patches to resolve some problems, some balancing issues, some play issues which existed early on. So again, with it being pretty newish and on that soft release, I don't want to be too critical and too judgmental because it is what it is. It's going to progress slowly, I think, over the next couple of months to maybe being a more rounded game. There's currently a lack of dungeons or raids that you'd expect in some other games, but that's something that they've said they'll work on. A proper 4 or 6 man dungeon coming into the game. But I have. From my comparison point, because I was thinking how much have game progressed, I downloaded the old school RuneScape, which is also available on app stores. Has been for a short while now, and that was one game where I pretty much started my MMORPG experience. And whilst it was a bit of a classical feel, and it was nice to reminisce on how games used to be, and being part of that community for a while, you kind of do realize just seeing where a mobile phone game has come from RuneScape to Warhammer Odyssey, and for me, it kind of makes me feel maybe we're not too far away from the likes of Final Fantasy or WoW on a mobile experience. So maybe I'm slightly more positive now about what I'm going to expect from Diablo 4 and using this as a place marker. How about you guys? What are your guys' thoughts on MMORPGs on a mobile phone?
Anton?
Antoine, you want to go first? Or?
If you want, I'm a big fan of Warhammer. So my disclaimer is, sorry, that's just my son waking up in the background. So my first disclaimer is Games Workshop. Please do me a MMO on Warhammer 40k. You have everything to make a great MMO. So please, end of the disclaimer. So, mobile game for me, it's Candy Crush. Uh, this is a mobile phone. This is not good for a Final Fantasy MMO or a Warhammer. It's too small a screen, and I played Final Fantasy Mobius. I think the name was Mobius a few years back, and I found it, like it's quite interesting. It's actually well made for a mobile phone, and it's fun. And as you said, after a few hours, I'm like, bah, this is just boring. That's too repetitive and stuff. So mobile phone for me, at most you play on a tablet, so it's still small, and I just don't see it. Maybe in Eastern market, I just don't see it really taking a lot of markets in the Western. I would say that's just my opinion, but you guys play on two screens, two laptop screens, right? Uh, I only have one, and I would like to have a second one. I just can't play on something so small. It's just that's all. Even if it's great, if it's a great story and all. Plus, it takes a lot of space on a phone, which doesn't have a lot of space. I don't have the latest Apple with 128 space. I stay on Candy Crush and give me my Warhammer 40k MMO on PC, please. That's just. What do you
Adam?
think?
Yeah, no, my only concern is I've tried playing phones, and I'm kind of with Antoine. Like for me, I tend to prefer like the easier, Sudoku or like a Candy Crush style game on the phone. Because I have played not mobiles, but my phone heats up really fast. And oh, I mean, what would the what's the like battery consumption on something like this? I mean, how long?
Oh,
That's another question. Okay, so let's say you're
yeah.
doing a dungeon. How long can you expect to run, say, one dungeon? Like, is this like the kind of thing you can finish on a bus in 5 minutes, or is this something you actually kind of have to sit down and dedicate time to?
Oh, at the moment,
Or could
but I mean, yeah. Usually, if you're farming for a good, like 1 or 2 hour period.
Wow.
The dungeons that they're talking about, I don't know. I'm presuming they're going to be about 15-20 minutes. Similar to like a slow Final Fantasy.
Okay, yeah. So for me, because like a phone game in my mind, I mean, it's not something I sit down on the couch and play. It's something that I play like maybe if I'm getting ready for bed, or if my wife is watching uh, a show that I'm not particularly into. It's something that I can play right now, and then if I have to, I can instantly put it away. Not something that it's like, oh, okay, I'm gonna have to devote the next 15 minutes or something to this. So, but I mean, that's just me. I know there's plenty of people that want to play these sort of things. So I'm kind of wondering, like, is this Android and iOS, or iOS only, or Android only, or
Yeah, yeah, it's on both.
it's on both? Okay, yeah. Because for me, the biggest problem is just my phone heating up and the battery life.
And
I'll
battery
start.
life, yeah.
Yeah. So I'll start a game and I'm like at 75, and then I finish. If I'm playing, because I play a few like RPGs, like the Mobius kind of thing, and yeah, I'll start it off, and I'll play for 15 minutes and I have 75 battery life, or I play for 15 minutes. Sorry, I have 70 battery life. And after 15 minutes of play, I look down and I'm at 45, and it's kind of like, oh no, like, and then it's really hot. So it's kind of like, oh, I need to put the phone in the fridge for a while and let it cool down.
Do you really put your phone in the fridge?
So, out of interest,
I've done it before. Yeah.
any of you guys Diablo fans? Are you going to be trying Diablo 4 Immortals when it releases on
I don't
mobile?
plan to.
I'm definitely gonna try it.
Not me. I used to play 2 a lot, but that was way back in the day, and I never tried 3, but it looked good. I had some friends playing it, and I watched their stream, and I was like, just don't have the time to play it, but it's really tempting. So maybe 4 again, if time allows. Maybe.
Well, Diablo Immortal is Diablo 2, right? It's just a remake.
No, the Immortals is
Uh,
the one they announced at BlizzCon, and people hated it, and then they branded it as Diablo Immortals, and then the new Diablo is coming out next year or next year.
But wasn't Diablo's Immortal was a remake of Diablo 2 on mobile, or is it entirely unique?
That's the name of the one that's coming out this year. I don't know about Diablo 2, but I know the mobile game coming out
no,
this
no
year is
idea.
Diablo Immortal.
Because I thought it was I might be wrong.
Again,
Oh yeah,
a
sorry.
Diablo I wouldn't
Diablo
play
is
on
not the
mobile.
game that is coming to mobile platforms. The mobile version is going to be Diablo Immortal.
Hmm.
Sorry, yeah, Diablo 4 is sometime in the future.
Yeah, 4 on
Yeah.
PC, yeah, maybe,
Okay.
but
So Diablo Immortals takes place between Diablo 2 and Diablo 3.
yeah. So Immortals on mobile phone, no, I won't try. I won't even try. I know that already.
The alpha launched in Australia and it's got some good reviews, so I was pretty pleased. So I'm definitely gonna
Oh, I'm sure.
give that a download when it's in open beta.
My thing with mobile games is I wouldn't mind. I would prefer to have like a controller, like the ones that you can clip onto the side, or one that you can clip your phone on top. Because for me, just rubbing the screen eventually, like it just feels weird to like, especially when you're trying to do controls. You know, if your finger's not in the right spot, I like having something tactile that I can touch and feel and know where my finger is on the button.
Absolutely
So,
agree with you.
and then it
Yeah.
frees up more screen space rather than having my thumbs right there in front of what I'm looking at. So, if I had like things that clip on the side, I think I'd be more inclined to play more mobile games like that.
Okay. Final thoughts about MMOs. Where do you think MMOs are going, guys? Future categories or future games you'd like to have as an MMO? Uh, we'll go Phil first. Phil, Antoine, Adam. So Phil, what are you looking forward to for
Oh, I was
MMOs?
gonna say Antoine's already got his ready.
I am
I've
if you
been
want.
struggling recently with. No, no, it's fine. I've been struggling a little bit recently, even with Final Fantasy 14. I felt a little bit of burnout from the repetitiveness of logging out. Kind of waiting a little bit for is it Endwalker,
Walker's the
the
next
final
one, yeah.
expansion in November supposedly, to yeah to reignite my spark a little bit. I think when you get involved in that much in a world and you log on every day, I don't know. I feel like and there's only a certain amount of content to do. It can kind of lead to so many times I'm sat there just pressing the jump button, jumping around some a plant pot, just going, what am I doing? What do I want to do? Where am I going?
You have a
So
problem.
I don't know. Very much like one. I would also like something Warhammer based to go into the MMORPG. I feel like there was what was the fantasy one that didn't particularly last very long.
I know the one you're talking about.
I'm not sure. I think I had some friends download it.
Dark Age
Yeah,
of
I had some
Camelot.
friends try that one, and I watched and wasn't particularly really wasn't really a massive fan of those. So yeah, I don't know. Maybe a 40K something would be nice. I think, but because I'm really in the mood for Outriders and I really like Destiny, so that possibly might be something that would be super interesting me. I'll see some psychers on on the battlefield.
That's good. Anton, what about you? What are you looking forward to? What are your
I bet you're
hopes
gonna
for?
agree with me.
Well, I'm really gonna go in this in what Phil just said. Same. I'm kind of burnout with FF14. I did, like up to Evansward until the end. Shadowbring. I think it was Shadowbringers, or was there one in
Shadowbringers
between?
was the most recent one, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I had a pause in between, and then I retook it
Yeah,
for
Stormborn was
Shadowbringers,
the one before.
and I did half of it. And I'm like, "Phew, okay, I'm done. It's a great world. It's a great story. And even though I know it's a great story, I'm like, nah, it's bon. I just don't want to go back to it anymore. It's just take too much time and all. And maybe I'm just tired of it. And I said it before, but again, you gave me a Warhammer 40K MMO. You have everything. You have all the races already. You already have a game like physical games of Warhammer, so you have all the base of the stuff. Your playing field is the entire universe plus chaos and warp. There's so much potential here. So hopefully, be it games, Games Workshop, so the guys who own the license Warhammer, not extremely good for their games and OAVs and stuff. So they need to partner to have a partnership with someone who knows how to do games. I don't know, Blizzard like this or something. But if they did a great job on Total War Warhammer when um, they partnered with some people who knew how to do game, and Total War Warhammer is absolutely fantastic. I want something in the 40K universe in MMO. I buy day one or two. Just to wait for the servers to everybody, the servers are gonna crash. So maybe later, but I'm gonna be onto it.
All right, Adam, what about you? Final thoughts for future of MMOs?
I'm kind of disappointed that you didn't get to talk about yours and we ran out of time. Because for me, I'd really like to see more variety. I mean, we have the traditional MMO like WoW or Final Fantasy 14, but then now we're starting to see a lot more action MMOs where the combat's more action oriented, like Black Desert or Terra, those sort of games. Uh, and like the one that you were going to talk about is there's almost no combat, right? It's like a farming MMO,
It's an exploration MMO.
an exploration MMO. So I'd like to see just more
Nice.
variety in the MMO. I mean, Destiny was supposed to be an FPS MMO, but you know, it's not. It's basically just kind of a lobby for content. I'd like to see more variety in the MMOs. You know, branching out of just the traditional, say, fantasy uh, setting. You know, I would love to see World of
Play EVE
StarCraft.
Online.
No,
EVE
that
Online.
is a time sink as well. um, but yeah, I kind of do the same thing. I mean, I've never had burnout, but what I'll do is I'll typically run through because I've never been involved in really big guilds or something like that. So I'll usually play a game and play through all the story content, and then you know I'll do something else, and then when the next patch comes out, I'll come back and I'll do that. Or I would log in maybe once a week, do all my weekly crafting stuff, and then that would be it, and then play a different game for the rest of the week. So, uh, but yeah, but
Okay.
now I need to get back into Final Fantasy 14 because they're doing their event up until Endwalkers opens up. So now I need to grab all those extra mounts and stuff that you can get. So grinding those raids.
All right, and thank you everyone for watching us live today and tuning into the podcast if you're listening later. That's all we have time for today. I think it was a bit ambitious for 4 MMOs and 4 aspects, but that's fine. I mean, we live, we learn. Not to mention video quality and Zencaster. So don't forget to drop us a line if you have any thoughts. When you hear from you, agree, disagree. What MMOs do you like? What aspects do you agree with the aspects we talk about today? Is Warhammer 40K a thing? Let us know. Adam?
Oh, excuse me. Yes, and you can keep up with us at Middle Age Gaming 2020 on Twitch, Middle Age Gaming on Instagram, and Gaming Age on Twitter. Middle Age Gaming 2020 on Facebook, and of course, you can email us directly at middleagegaming2020 at gmail.com. Sorry, I looked away from the script.
As laggy as my thing is, hope it comes through. It's my turn to ask a question. What does the week look like in terms for content, streaming, and gaming for you guys?
For me, on my part, I'll try, and again, emphasis on try, to do one Atelier Lisa in the first part of the week. So hopefully tomorrow, maybe Wednesday. I'll try my best. No promises there. And Subnautica by the end of the week. And I'm really going to try to do it because Subnautica is absolutely fantastic. I'm going to try to do that, and we'll see if I succeed. Hopefully I will. Yeah, so that's it for me. Adam, maybe?
So tomorrow is going to be near. I'm probably going to finish that relatively quickly. I'm on ending D, and then it's just E, and then I'm done with the game. So that might be my last time with Near tomorrow. And then on Friday is going to be Apex. And then starting next week, getting ready for the Final Fantasy VII Remake Integrate. I think I'm going to be playing through Final Fantasy VII Remake
Oh,
again. So
nice.
I think I'm going to replay that. And then I'm going to have that out of the way and done just in time for the Intergrade update. So
Okay, I've been playing XCOM Chimera Squad, really enjoying it. I should be playing some Hearthstone this season just to rank up and stuff, but I think I will commit a whole 30 days to it next month. So just XCOM Chimera Squad until I finish it, and then probably something before D&D Dark Alliance comes out. And that will be it for me, Phil. What about you?
Yeah, well, we were planning to do the next episode of the Sword and Sorcery on Sunday, but unfortunately we're having a little bit of a spike in coronavirus cases at the moment here. So that will impact, depending on the situation on Sunday, whether I can actually have anybody over. It's possible that I won't. So in that case, maybe Sunday I'll probably be streaming some Outriders, I think.
Cool.
I will flex through a few different classes, maybe, and show expeditions and endgame. Anton?
All right, so well, now we are finally over. So look out for podcast showing sometime this week, and see you next week for when we talk about. Ryan, do we have anything to talk about next
Well,
week?
no, this is usually I just ask Adam. Adam, what are we going to talk about? And put it all on his
Adam,
shoulders.
no pressure.
Oh,
Do you have
me.
something for us?
I was
No,
going to say
it's up my
Phil
head.
has joined us for the first time. We should ask Phil what we're going to do next week.
Okay, Phil, no pressure.
We're hazing him.
Throwing on me there. I'm not sure what you guys particularly really like. What you guys play. Maybe I don't know, like things that have been brought into the game world from other origins. Maybe like things that have been movies before and then become games, or how sort of like media and games interact.
That's fantastic.
Well done.
Yeah, I like
That's a
it.
good
A lot of
topic.
games that have been turned into movies as well.
Damn, dude, you hit a home run in your first try. All right, so then you heard it straight from Phil. Next week, things that have been brought from outside of games into games, and we'll figure out a way to take that when we're coming up with scripts and stuff. Thanks everyone for tuning in, and we will see you guys same time next week, Tuesday, 9:45 a.m. Taiwanese time in the morning, 9:45 p.m. for Antoine. Hopefully next week we can grab Ben, and it will be a 5-person podcast show. Okay, see you guys later.
All right. Thank you.